I'm not saying make excuses for terrible things or that forgiveness is not always for everyone. Like there are some people that shouldn't be forgiven. But in my case, I felt like it was warranted.
Hi, I'm KJ Aiello, and welcome to Season 2 of The Book Hook, where each episode we dig into writing and storytelling that challenges the status quo and examines how authors use their work to resist, to question, and to reimagine our world. No surface level chat, just thoughtful conversations for critical readers like you.
I always wanted to be a mom, and I'm sure psychologists can analyze the crap out of it to fix the thing that my mom broke. I wanted my own family so bad. I wonder if part of that started unraveling my faith in the sense that I couldn't grieve the way everyone else could grieve because she was disfellowshipped, so she didn't have a memorial in the Kingdom Hall.
So get your coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into today's conversation. And also, I gotta up my game. Like, honestly.
You?
In the best way possible. Oh my, Tamara, what are you doing? Okay, let's get
You have to
Let's
up
get
your
it.
game?
Let's do it. Yes, here we go. We've got like a fan club for each other here. I love it. Canadian. Yes. So I've got Tamara Jong here, who is a Montreal-born writer of Chinese and European ancestry. Her work has been published in the Humber Literary Review, Room Magazine, and The Fiddlehead, and has been both long and shortlisted for various creative nonfiction prizes. She is a graduate of the Writer's Studio at Simon Fraser University, so no big deal. A former member of Room Magazine's collective, and this Worldly Girls is her first book. It is a memoir. It's described here. I was trying to think of a way to describe Worldly Girls in my own words, but I feel like it's perfect on the back cover here. It is a powerful memoir that documents the slow unraveling of her connection to her faith and the tragic history of her fractured family, shining a light into the dark corners of memory that have haunted her well into adulthood. Welcome, Tamara, to the Book Hook.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm such a fan.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, I'm a fan too. I was just saying that I finished Worldly Girls last week, and I just kind of had to sit back and take it in and think about it and up my game, and just stunning. So first of all, congratulations. Well done on your debut book. I'm wondering if we could start with, I know on Mattea Roach's The Bookends, you were just on. Congratulations. That's pretty amazing. If anybody doesn't know about CBC's Bookends with Mattea Roach, it is one of our, I would say probably the biggest bookish podcasts that we have. And so many incredible writers have been on it, including our very own Tamara Jong right here. So that's super cool. And she started with the question of, what does worldly mean? So the title is Worldly Girls. And you did explain it in that there is this dichotomy between what we think of outside of the religiosity. This is me trying to speak too quickly when I'm also not feeling very well. Of being, somebody who is worldly, who is wise, who has understanding of the complexities of the world around us, versus in Jehovah's Witness teachings, it is a bad thing. It is sinful. It is straying away from Jehovah's teachings. But I also want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because I do feel like there is this extra layer of worldliness in being a writer. Your writing started quite a long time ago, while you were also a practicing Jehovah's Witness. I'm wondering if we can talk about, was there a push-pull, a tug there, being a writer, being somebody who is interrogating the world while also within the Jehovah's Witness faith for you?
Yeah, I think it started pretty early on because, books kind of change you, right? You're reading them and how can you not be transformed? And so when you're dealing also with a difficult family life, you kind of need that transformation. You need that escape. You need that unreality because the reality is just so terrifying. And I think as a child, you don't have the language yet to describe that. Not really in so many words. I mean, you can try, but really, who are you talking to, if anybody at all, right? So I do feel like, of course, a writer, I was encouraged to write. I was encouraged by my mom to read as well. And so meanwhile, they're offering you, I feel like these lifelines, these little bridges. And maybe they didn't have the language either to kind of tell you, this is how you survive. I only found out later that my mom's family came from like a lot of writers. And
Really?
But I only found this later through my aunt. And I think being in the faith and also listening to the stories, because as a Christian, there are a lot of stories. We didn't have hellfire, but our hellfire was like Armageddon. So if you did die in the faith, then you die. And then hopefully in the new order, after Armageddon comes, destroys the wicked, you would be resurrected back. But that wasn't the terrifying part. I think the terrifying part was the Armageddon part, not so much the going to sleep in death, because you just died, and then so the terrifying part and wrapping your head around it as a kid is not like, again, hellfire, but it was like Armageddon, the destruction of the ungodly. And if you were out of step, that you would be ungodly, So how does a kid kind of like reconcile that, with a loving God and also with life? So meanwhile, still loving writing, still loving reading. So I'd write little stories, and some of them were, I would say a little bit weird, but I mean, I guess considering
Fair.
my background, yeah, they could be weird, but I mean, I guess it was a form of escape. So there was this push and pull, and I never really thought of myself as a writer back then, like as a true writer. It was just a thing I did, I enjoyed. And in school, I kept on with it. But meanwhile, I was getting pulled in the direction of being more religious once my mother, had started drinking. And I think I needed some stability to cling to. So there is that push and pull, whether you can have a stability in a community or whether you can go off and do your own thing. And I guess I opted to kind of do the safe thing. So writing was a nice hobby, a thing that I did sometimes, right? So it wasn't something I seriously considered as a career at all.
I'm going to take just a second of your time here because I know you want to get your hands on a copy of the books featured on the Book Hook podcast. Well, good news. Thebookarchive.ca has got you covered. The Book Archive is a queer, independently owned online bookseller that ships all across Canada. They stock tons of your favorite books, and guess what? They also do special orders. Yeah, I get like 95% of my books from thebookarchive.ca. Most of them are special order. Thebookarchive.ca are committed to carrying books written by authors who want to resist, to question, and to reimagine our world. So use the link below and check out the books at thebookarchive.ca. They've curated all the lists of the authors featured on the Book Hook. Like the Book Hook, the Book Archive, it's kind of like a match made in heaven. Now back to the conversation. So at what point then, I'm completely going off my script here, and I always do this as I prepare for these, and then I dive into the conversation, and there's so many things that come up organically. When did that start to shift for you? Going from writing as something you did to writing as, hey, I could pursue this seriously?
I think once my mental health deteriorated in my 30s, I think I started writing. Well, I mean, it was kind of like a little bit of like fluff, I would say. Well, actually a lot of fluff, a lot of like beginnings, failed stories. And I submitted some stuff and it was very good, to contests and things. But I think therapy, started to kind of, help me kind of get into it, I think, more seriously. My analyst or Jungian analyst had been an English teacher. And also I think sort of was nurturing that like writing part where I started to get away from the fables, the silly stuff, trying on other people's stuff and pretending it was mine. And then, 2011, I went to the Humber School for Writers like workshop. And I think in that fiction workshop, I made a couple of friends who I'm still friends with, and then shifted from fiction eventually to nonfiction. But that kind of week kind of changed stuff for me where I, heard panels, met with other writers, was in community. And I think the community aspect is a big part. I had lost, a lot of my, I would say, Jehovah's Witness community at that point. So I guess I was searching. I did find it in sports and stuff eventually too, but I think the writing community was something that really nurtured my heart and soul in a different way than, of course, sports would, right? But I mean, of course, I love sports, and I only found that like later, although I had liked it growing up. But hey, you can only like so many things, My husband's like, pick a thing, So.
No, I disagree. Pick them all. Pick them all. Life is like a buffet. You have to sample everything. If you don't like it, that's fine, but you've sampled it.
Especially when you're cut off from a lot of these things, right? So you can go this way, I think. And that does happen to people, and I don't blame them for that at all. Or you can kind of focus on one thing. But I was always like, oh, want to try this. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this,
Yeah. 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 The worldliness of,
Yes,
what
yes.
life has to offer to us. And I do feel like as writers, we do have to sample a lot of things because we have to write from a place of worldliness, a place of understanding the world, not just as a participant in community, but as somebody who can sort of step back and look at it from, the 10,000-foot view and look at all parties and all behaviors and all, actions and why people do what they do. And I feel like as I was reading Worldly Girls, that I'm wondering, so where's my question here? I felt a kinship here as a memoirist myself, and how you were able to write about trauma, and particularly religious trauma. And that I think it was Selena Mercury in the New Quarterly, she wrote that you were able that Worldly Girls approaches religious trauma through a lens of complexity rather than complete condemnation. And I noticed that in all of the traumas that you write about and all of the losses, the grief. This is very much a book about grief as well. How were you able to get to that point where you would have, the wisdom, the distance, but also still be able to bring us into the emotions, the pathos of these moments in your life? How are you able to navigate that?
Well, I feel like a lot of drafts, a lot of community, a lot of
Mm,
therapy, some meds. I did try to write through some of my grief and trauma, and that wasn't really healthy. And I wouldn't recommend that for people. But I had to kind of learn by trial and error because sometimes you don't know until you know, and then you're in
mm,
it, and I was thinking, oh well, Sylvia Plath did this, and Anne Sexton did this, and Jack Kerouac
mm,
did this, but you know, my therapist kind of tried to point out to me when I had let her read some fiction that kind of was exploring those type of themes, and she's like, you can push harder, but it's not going to make this work that we're doing,
mm,
faster and easier to kind of go through. And I'm paraphrasing, but so I think a lot of drafts, I think space, because Aiello Sabari was one of my nonfiction teachers who really changed my
yeah,
writing life, really gave encouragement, but was also would give really great advice. Things like, this is happening now, isn't it? So I suggest that you take space, from a
yeah,
writer that already knows. So I think talking about it openly does help. I think making space for it and sometimes putting stories away for many years. For example, like leave
mm,
taking was a really tough story to write for me.
mm,
And at the time, it started off as a little like blurb of nothing. And then it became, really big and something that I couldn't stop from happening, from talking to my relatives, from talking to my brother who had been there when my mom died. And I think just putting that aside for a while because I actually had been submitting it, and it never got published. And I thought, is this piece really terrible? And then
mm,
when I showed it to my editor, she had a lot of questions, Lacey May. And so I said, here, this might answer a lot of questions you have. So I gave it to her and she was like saying, again, paraphrasing, that it was one of the better essays, of the book and answered a lot of questions. So, I mean,
mm,
sometimes it needed time to sit. It had been heavily edited and workshopped. So I think it needed all of that and that space, I think, for me to be able to like look at it and not feel the feels. Because every time I read it,
mm.
I mean, I cried for like a long time. And I think when you're so connected to it, of course you're going to write that way. It's going to be raw. And I get you want people to feel, but not that, So it
Yeah.
went through heavy, heavy, heavy editing. So I think that's part of it and part of that work, many, many drafts sometimes, unfortunately. It's the
Yeah.
work that's necessary to be done. I feel like you would understand that, like
I
in
do.
the
I'm
months during the
nodding
year.
because, yeah, it's I actually want to ask you then because I had my own experience during the editing process and I'm not going to tell you what it was because I don't want to take your answer here. What was the editing? I'm going to preface this also for viewers. I'm going a little like, okay, hold up, bear with me here. This is like the bipolar person here is like, okay, I have all these tangents here and it will come to like an actual question here in that when writing a memoir, when writing something that is so intimate, going through the editing process can be a little bit challenging because it's not just editing a craft, it's also what parts of the story to bring forward, what parts pull back from, that sort of thing. But it's all your life. So I'm wondering how you were able to go through the editing process.
I have to admit, because I had never been through that before, I've edited story by story, but never all
Mm,
in like one, book. It was a little bit overwhelming at first. I didn't realize, although it was broken up in two parts, we did the first half and then we did the second half. I didn't realize that I would actually feel again, even though a lot of stories I had stepped away from for quite a while. But to edit your whole life in like what, less than a year, over and over and over again, it's something.
Yeah. Just like,
It is
ooh,
something.
let's take a breath for
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's quite the accomplishment. I I love memoirs for that because it's not just, as a memoirist myself, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way in that reading a really well-written memoir that dives deep into some of these, traumatic complexities, intimate complexities, that just understanding the amount of work that goes into it, but also the amount of vulnerability that goes into it is remarkable. I'm wondering if there was anything in Worldly Girls that maybe you wanted a little bit more of, or maybe you withheld. Were there any parts that you did remove from it?
I feel like sometimes I know that it's my story and these people have connected with me and they're part of my story, but there is some stuff, of course, I had to hold back. There's some things that I guess I feel like it's not my story to tell.
Mm.
I held back because of some of the relationships I have now that I still want to keep. And I know I did give a lot, but I felt like I think as a memoirist, we deserve to hold something back for ourselves too. And maybe we're the only
Yeah.
ones that know, or one other person or two other. And I don't think that's like untrue or like unfair to the reader because I feel like we do give a lot. Like I feel like Mary Carr is pretty like an amazing writer, but I'm sure even Mary Carr holds back on certain
Mhm.
things, like I think sometimes somebody said like, well, then, that people should have acted better in our lives. And I believe that's true. But
Mhm.
if I was given the same situation as my parents, sometimes I think, what would I have done? Would I have done the same things, if not worse, or if not better?
Mm.
Right. So I try to give that little bit of grace. My brother has been through a lot and I love him. And who am I to judge him for the things that
Yeah.
he's done? For me, religion was my lifeline, but for him, it was other things that kind of kept him going. And he's still here. He's very resilient and he's so full of love. And I guess I try to think like when you have a heart full of love, like why let these situations and things take this away from us? Why? We
Yeah.
deserve love, even though we didn't always get it in the way that we needed it. So I feel like in my writing too, like, and the writer deserves love too, right? Like hope. Somebody was talking about kids' books that at the end you kind of have to have something. And I
Mhm.
think even in a memoir that's really tough to read and terrible sometimes, that there's got to be something for them, just like there's something for us, right? We made it, we're survived. That little kid that was all by themselves or thought they were by themselves or they thought they were nothing. Like for myself, like I wasn't nothing. I wasn't by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to come to a similar place. And I found this with mine, writing not just as, the person who was living at that time, embodying the kid, embodying the teenager, embodying the young adult, and going through what, you went through and what I went through, but also being able to understand why people do what they do, particularly people who may have harmed us in the past. Being able to take that moment to step back and say, okay, like this is this person. They, particular your mother, who was a very complex person in your life, who you lost very young, being able to understand your mother in a way that is sort of, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but separated from being her daughter, but rather seeing your mother as a person. And I think you did that very well in Worldly Girls, and it's quite admirable and remarkable. And I don't have a question there. Just more of like a conversation. I'm really bad at actually just like, let's just talk, I have
No,
no
but this is
question.
nice though.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, this is nice. It
How
doesn't
did you
necessarily need a question. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't, I think it's an acknowledgement of that. I think that, people who are new, like writers perhaps new into writing memoir, or readers who are sort of, is this for me? Like, do I want to read a memoir? And understanding how difficult it is to be able to come to that, that position as memoirists, as writers, being able to have that grace, like you said, for the people who might have not have behaved so well. They could have done a little bit better, but speaking of your mother, can we go there? Are you
Of
comfortable with
course.
us
Yeah.
going
Yeah. Of
there?
course. Yeah.
Okay. You lost your mother very young. You were 21, I believe, when you lost your mother, and you lost her very suddenly, very tragically. I'm wondering if we can go into a little bit about what happened, but how that also impacted you as a person.
Yeah, the thing is, we weren't living at home by then. We had already moved out. When I turned 18, I said to my older sister, like, let's go. Like, I was the one, we gotta
Mhm.
go. Because my mom had been disfellowshipped, and I thought, this is a worldly person right now, right?
Mhm.
And it's not going to be good for our spirituality. I was starting to commit myself more and more. You know, I was becoming a full-time minister. We were already ministers, but you can volunteer your time to be more of a minister, and which is
Yeah.
what my mother actually did, curiously, before when I was growing up for some time. So I think we were already kind of stepped away from the mother-daughter's role. So in that part, I felt like I was okay. But my mom had called every once in a while to where we were living, like she knew where we lived. And then I hadn't talked to her very much, right? So when that happened, my dad had called and said, you know, he's just like, mommy's dead, you know, is and then this is
Mhm.
like after sort of being estranged. Last time I saw her, it's in the book. I saw her in a subway station in the metro in Quebec. And we had seen each other in the hallway, you know, and all those things, it's like all those things have happened. You're sure you're doing the right things. And I think you must for a moment. I think probably like you cry. You can't, your body will not betray. Like it just does what it does, right? Like I couldn't,
Mhm.
if I had been so sure about my decisions, I feel like I would have probably reacted differently, but I didn't. I instantly
Mhm.
started crying because it's upsetting. It's your
Mhm.
parent, you know? And so for those moments, the mask is off, right? And then you go back to reality. But I think with that, I wonder if part of that started unraveling my faith in the sense that I couldn't grieve the way everyone else could grieve because she was disfellowshipped. So she didn't have a memorial in the Kingdom Hall, even though she had been previously
Mhm.
baptized. She was estranged from the congregation. You know, people did come from my hall to come by for, they had a memorial. It all seems like a blur now, but you know, saying, oh, well, she won't be resurrected in the new order, you know, telling you stuff like that. And you're like, oh, yeah, you know, because we know the drill, right?
Yeah.
So I just think 3 years later, I ended up leaving Quebec, you know, because I felt like I could never grow up and I had to get away. You know, I just
Mhm.
had to leave like the whole place, even though my dad was there. I had some friends there and stuff like that. So I think I found myself, you know, in Ontario for many reasons, but also I found my way back to writing. And I think just I wanted to mention about writing about my mom is that I think I wouldn't honestly have gotten to know her, forgive her, and kind of reconcile in a sense with her if I didn't write about it. You know, so
Mm.
whatever stories I was making, I feel like a lot of them were always about her. You know, it is what it is. But the thing I regret, of course, is there's a few things. There's more than a few things. But I am
This is why
grateful for
we're
that time.
writers.
I know, right? I am very grateful for the time that I guess I got to spend, you know, with her writing this book. And I feel like it is her book too, and it's not just mine. Even though, like, again, we couldn't share a lot of our writers' lives now that I'm older, but there was definitely a thread that connected us together. And I feel like that was through the writing and reading.
I do feel like this book is just as much about motherhood in multiple ways, and however motherhood, the iteration of that happens in our life, as well as just as much about motherhood as it is about religion and faith and religious trauma. I wonder if we can go into the role of mother in your own life, because that has been a complex experience for you. I'm wondering, and you also have someone in your life who is, you know, a stepdaughter. Avery, I believe, is her name, and how she came into your life and the loss of motherhood in multiple ways. Your mother, Avery's mother. And I know that you tried to conceive on your own as well. So I'm wondering if you feel comfortable diving into that as well, and how that impacted the writing of Worldly Girls.
I always wanted to be a mom. And, you know,
Mm.
I'm sure psychologists can analyze the crap out of it, you know, to fix the thing that my mom broke, just like I feel like my mom was trying to fix the thing her mom broke and vice, you know, and so forth. Right. I wanted my own family like so bad. I felt like I could fix myself and fix the baby and fix everything. But of course, it didn't end up happening for me. I always chickened out at the last second, you know, being connected with someone forever. It was really scary to me. And a couple of times it happened, and I was like, you know, running out the front door, you know, like the runaway bride. I didn't want any of that. I was scared. And so, of course, you know, I say like to have a baby, you have to be having sex. And I wasn't doing that. So it wasn't only to my late 30s where I started, you know, I ended up meeting who's my now partner, like husband, Ed. And then by the time we met, and then his ex was pregnant. And so therefore,
Mm.
it wouldn't be a good time with a new boyfriend to be having a baby. And what man would, or what anybody would want, have a family right away. And as I was figuring out who I was, then I was also scared, so I was going through therapy, and then I was like, maybe I'm going to be a terrible mom, because of my mental health issues and my background. And
Mm.
I kept delaying. And then by the time I tried to, it was like too late. My body was like, no. But meanwhile, we had this little, like, Avery, who was like, I've known her since she was a baby. And I mean, how lucky am I, right? Yes, I didn't technically have my own biological child, but I love this kid, And it got, sadly, she lost her mom too. And I was like, what has happened in our lives that she has to experience this as well, but even way younger than me.
Yeah.
And so she said she felt like she could talk to me about it because she knows her dad hasn't lost his mom. She goes, I know that you understand. And I try to kind of like give her like little tips, like I know I can't be her mother in the sense that her mother was. It's different, right? It's your mom. But
Mm.
I could try my best, right? I could try to be the mom that wasn't there for me. And so meet her where she is. And I did try my best. I tried my best. But I remember she's like, you're like a mom to me, and that really like broke and fixed, I don't know, my heart, I guess, because although you try your best, you don't know. Sometimes I didn't ever feel good enough even for me. Or, am I good enough
Yeah.
boyfriend? Am I good enough girlfriend? Am I good enough anything? And then to hear that from like a child who they don't really filter the same way we do. They don't really contrive, stories in the same way that we do because we have to, or we have to survive, or we just try to placate or be nice. And so I've been really lucky to have a kid all along, So although, like I said, I don't know, I don't feel sad about it. Like all of a sudden one day I felt like it was not being able to have a physical baby was like gone. It didn't,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I didn't feel like that grief that I had felt before, you know? And that's a gift to me. That's a blessing.
Because you had it all along anyways.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I love that it is kind of a full circle and you come back to, I think at the very end, you're with your partner, I believe, making lemon pie.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
and reflecting back on your mother. And I feel like that is the full circle moment. And they say, when we write a memoir, we have to have, the full narrative arc.
Mm.
And I'm sure you probably, in your your education of your writing education, that's the word for it. You're getting the best of me today, Tamara, I swear. Yes. Words. I don't know about you, but when I was going through like creating the story arc of my memoir, people don't realize that we do have to create a fully formed story. We have to have, the what is the right now, the status quo, what is sort of like, I guess your call to action, or like what is the fundamental shift. But then near the end, there has to be sort of that fundamental shift to, where are we at? What have we learned? How has the world changed for us? And I do feel like it is perfectly encapsulated in Worldly Girls, and that you do bring us back to your mother through all of these themes of motherhood. We find we're with a Tamara who feels like she is settled in her own skin and settled in her own life. I feel like that was just praise. There's no question there. It was just praise. Like you did it so well. I'm gonna recommend this book to everybody because I absolutely love it. But I'm wondering now, where you are now, your book is out, getting praise. What is your relationship with religion like now?
I don't think I have much of one anymore. I think first I was very anxious to fill that void. And after that, all like consuming relationship with religion and Jehovah and the community, I think I was afraid to be sucked in again, I guess. I did try, but nothing really seemed to fill it. It all seemed kind of foreign to me. And so I try to sit with the uncomfortableness of what that is and being certain of what my belief system is and being certain of what was going to happen when I realized it was all uncertain all the time. Like my husband's like, I have news for you. He's like, everyone living right now is like going to die at some point, right? So whether it's by Armageddon or he's like, that's the reality of it. And we've talked a lot about faith. I used to always say, oh, you have to have faith. So I think he's like, that's not an answer, So challenging my belief, I guess having these discussions I don't have a lot of friends that are like super religious. There's some that have a faith or they're spiritual. And so I
Hmm.
try to just kind of be open to it. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I could be part of something again. As of right now, it's hard for me.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm not open to the opportunity, but I don't want something to just kind of take over, I guess. I'm afraid of that.
Yeah.
So I think religion is good for some people. I mean, the community definitely helped me, and having something that was strict, I think, sort of sometimes helped me, but
Hmm.
it kind of parented me in ways that I hadn't been parented, but it also took away some choices that I have been making now that I didn't get a chance
Yeah.
to make back then.
It's almost like you approach religion as the same way you approach, say, your mother in the book as well. This sort of this complexity. There is the harm, but there is also the understanding of what was needed there and the role that played in your life, and perhaps the gaps that were filled that you needed, at different points in your life. And I think that was really well done. Going into writing Worldly Girls, did you have any particular intentions for your reader?
Well, I hope they just be open to reading about it. I guess I think I want. You're pretty good. You're pretty good.
Oh, we have the cat. I
Ginny
love
keeps
it.
trying to make. Ginny keeps trying to come back. The intention, yeah, the reader was Junie. Junie, who wants to
Yes.
stand on my keyboard and change the
Yeah.
language of my computer. So I think with intention, I think for me personally, maybe I was looking for that reader that was similar to me, where I was looking for someone that would perhaps help guide me the way that I needed to be guided when I first left, because I did feel kind of alone. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually I did find mentors, whether they were books or actual people. So I think I'm writing it for them, to be open. And also, I guess, and like grief is not linear. I talk a lot about grief. You know, Judy. Oh, sorry.
I love it.
See the little nails. I don't think I had always a specific reader in mind. Maybe that reader was me.
What do you want your reader to take away from when they read Worldly Girls?
I think hope, mostly, love. I think those things are really needed, right? Especially right now. I think,
Yeah.
and not to lose that empathy, for the other. And I'm not saying make excuses for terrible things, or that forgiveness is not always for everyone. Like, there are some people that shouldn't be forgiven,
Right.
but in my case, I felt like it was warranted, like it was, once I understood more things, from talking to my relatives and things with my parents and understanding, alcoholism and, immigration and displacement, and coming from somewhere else, like, not knowing how to be a father, my dad telling me he didn't really know his dad, it opened up
Yeah.
like different world for me where it's easy to blame at first, when you don't know where they're coming from because you just see the things that happened. Like the
Yeah.
70s, I think I was talking about that with someone, where you leave kids in the car or you go down to the store and buy cigarettes for your parents. We bought a
Oh
case of
my
two for,
God.
like that was things that were done, whereas they don't do that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Being
know?
left alone at like at 8 years old in your house, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so it's like,
Yeah,
we can leave the kids for a couple hours. They'll be fine.
yeah, yeah. Go to
And
a
we did
party,
not have
you know?
911 in Canada then. Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Go to a party,
No, we
like
didn't.
down the hall and leave your kid yeah. So like
Oh
all those
yeah.
things, right? Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah.
was like,
We
oh,
survived.
leave your baby like in a party room with a bunch of coats, like whatever, right? Like, oh, we'll come back and get you later.
Oh my God.
So
Younger audiences now, like
they're
listeners are
like,
going, what?
that sounds like a
Yes,
horror
we
movie.
survived. It kind
Yeah. Yeah.
of was. Okay, well, I have one last question. Big question. Are you working on anything now?
So at the
What can
moment,
we
I'm just kind
expect
of,
from you?
yeah, I know. There were 3 essays that didn't make it in, by the way. So
Okay.
Stacey May had said, I don't know if you want to hear this, but I think it's another book, and I'm like, oh,
That's a blessing and a curse.
it is a blessing and a curse because as soon as she said it, I knew she was correct. She was right. They're about my
Yeah.
father. So eventually, those essays, I'll work on that about my dad because after he passed, there was a lot of things I didn't know about him. A lot of things started to put together about him. I touch on in the book about him being a paper son, so buying papers to come here, how his name wasn't his real name. So I kind of want to investigate that further and kind of our relationship. I mean, a lot of it was about my mom, but of course, my father's my father. So I still need to do a whole lot of research. So I'm kind of leaving that, for when I have more space for that. But for now, like I was kind of
Yeah.
enjoying what happened with Worldly Girls, and I have like those 3 essays kind of sitting to the side to be the next project.
I can't wait to see that one come out into the world. I am Tamara Jong, audience, listeners, watchers, viewers, again, words. I'm not feeling well, so I'm here. I am vertical and not horizontal. I was so excited to talk to you today. Tamara Jong is the author of Worldly Girls, came out last year, 2025, late 2025, Book Hug Press, available pretty much everywhere, independent bookstores. I'm just saying. Congratulations, Tamara. This is a phenomenal accomplishment, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love this conversation.
This episode of The Book Hook was hosted and produced by KJ Aiello, with video, content, and social media production by Jackie Johnstone. Don't forget to drop a like, a comment, share, and follow. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at @handlethebookhook_podcast and sign up for our newsletter on Substack.